What happens when one of Hollywood's biggest action stars meets one of television's sharpest comedic minds, and everything goes completely sideways? Tonight, I'm breaking down the most explosive late-night television moment that had audiences, gasping and network executives scrambling for damage control. This isn't your typical celebrity interview gone wrong. This is a masterclass in how two alpha personalities can turn a simple promotional appearance into an absolute battlefield. Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me about the most awkward interview you've ever witnessed. Because trust me, after tonight's story, you're going to have a whole new definition of uncomfortable television. The Late Show with Stephen Colbert was supposed to be just another stop on Bruce Willis's promotional tour. The action legend was making the rounds to promote his latest film, and his publicist had carefully orchestrated a series of appearances designed to showcase Willis in his most charming, approachable light. Colbert's show was considered a safe space for celebrities, known for its intelligent humor and the host's ability to make even the most reserved guests feel comfortable. The pre-interview notes suggested this would be a straightforward conversation about Willis's career, his new project, and maybe some light banter about his family life. But from the moment Bruce Willis walked onto that iconic Late Show stage, something felt different. The usual easy smile that had charmed audiences for decades seemed forced, almost mechanical. His trademark swagger appeared more like a defensive posture, and when he settled into the guest chair across from Colbert, there was a tension in his shoulders that suggested he was bracing for something. The studio audience, packed with fans expecting the usual late-night entertainment formula, had no idea they were about to witness television history in the making. Stephen Colbert, ever the professional, launched into his opening with characteristic wit. "Bruce Willis, welcome to The Late Show. I have to say, after watching your new film, I'm convinced you could probably take down half of Manhattan with nothing but a paperclip and some stern looks." The audience laughed appreciatively, but Willis's response was unexpectedly curt. "Well, Stephen, that's what happens when you actually commit to your roles instead of just reading jokes off cue cards." The studio fell into an uncomfortable silence. Colbert's eyebrows shot up, his expression shifting from jovial host to someone who had just been unexpectedly challenged. "Excuse me?" Colbert leaned forward slightly, his voice maintaining its professional tone, but with an edge that regular viewers would recognize as dangerous territory. "I'm sorry, did you just suggest that what I do here is somehow less legitimate than your work?" Willis shifted in his chair, his jaw tightening. "I'm saying there's a difference between entertaining people and actually putting yourself on the line for your craft. Some of us have been dodging real explosions and learning real fighting techniques for 30 years. Others make jokes about politicians from behind a desk." The audience was now completely silent, sensing that this wasn't part of some elaborate comedy bit. Colbert's legendary quick wit kicked into high gear. "You know, Bruce, you're absolutely right. I've never had to dodge explosions, but I have had to dodge network executives trying to cancel my show, deal with politicians trying to intimidate me, and somehow make sense of a world that often feels like it's written by the same people who wrote some of your direct-to-video sequels." The comeback landed like a precision strike, and Willis's face darkened considerably. "Direct-to-video?" Willis's voice dropped to that dangerous whisper that moviegoers knew meant someone was about to get hurt. "Let me tell you something about direct-to-video, Stephen. Those films employed hundreds of people, fed families, and gave audiences exactly what they wanted. They weren't pretentious attempts to seem important while hiding behind liberal talking points and celebrity worship." Colbert's expression shifted from surprise to genuinely offended. "Liberal talking points? I'm sorry, did you just stumble onto the wrong show? Because last I checked, this was The Late Show, not some right-wing podcast recorded in someone's basement." The tension in the studio was now palpable. Audience members were looking at each other, unsure whether to laugh, applaud, or simply leave. The show's producers, visible in the wings, were making frantic hand gestures, but both men seemed completely focused on each other, the rest of the world fading away. Willis leaned forward, his voice rising. "You know what your problem is, Colbert? You think because you can make people laugh, you're somehow qualified to lecture them about how to think, how to vote, how to live their lives. Some of us prefer to entertain without the sermon. And some of us prefer to use our platform for something more meaningful than just blowing things up and looking tough," Colbert shot back, his composure beginning to crack. "At least when I talk about politics, I'm not pretending to be something I'm not. I'm not playing dress-up as a hero while supporting policies that hurt real heroes, real working people." Willis stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor with a harsh sound that made several audience members jump. "Playing dress-up?" Willis's voice was now audibly angry, his famous cool completely evaporated. "I've done more for this country's military and first responders than you could ever dream of. I've visited troops, supported veteran causes, and used my fame to actually help people, not just to make myself look good while tearing down everyone who disagrees with my politics." Colbert was on his feet now, too, the pretense of a normal interview completely abandoned. "Supporting the troops while supporting politicians who send them into unnecessary wars isn't patriotism, Bruce. It's hypocrisy with a flag pin." Colbert's voice carried that sharp intelligence that had made him famous, but now it was weaponized. "And let's talk about using fame responsibly. When's the last time you used your platform for anything other than promoting whatever paycheck project you're phoning in this month?" The insult hit its mark, and Willis took a step closer to the desk. "Phoning it in?" Willis's voice was now dangerously quiet, the kind of controlled anger that had made him famous in countless action films. "You want to talk about phoning it in? Let's talk about a guy who built his entire career on playing a character, hiding behind fake personas and scripted comebacks. At least when I'm on screen, people know they're getting Bruce Willis, not some manufactured television personality designed by focus groups and network suits." Colbert's face flushed, his hands gripping the edge of his desk. "A character? A character? Bruce, I've been doing this for over 2 decades. I've interviewed presidents, covered wars, and built something meaningful. What have you built lately besides a reputation for taking any role that pays well enough to fund your real estate investments?" The audience was now completely transfixed, some pulling out phones to record what was clearly becoming an unprecedented moment in late-night television history. "At least I earn my money honestly," Willis shot back, his voice rising again. "I don't sit behind a desk pretending to be some moral authority while making millions off corporate sponsors and political connections. You want to talk about selling out? Look in the mirror, Stephen. You've turned comedy into propaganda and called it entertainment." The accusation hung in the air like a challenge, and Colbert's famous composure finally began to crack completely. "Propaganda?" Colbert's voice was now matching Willis's intensity. "Propaganda is when you use your platform to spread lies and division. What I do is called journalism mixed with comedy, something you might understand if you'd ever picked up a book that wasn't a script for another mindless action sequel." Willis laughed, but it was a harsh, humorless sound that made several audience members visibly uncomfortable. "Journalism?" Willis shook his head, his expression one of complete disdain. "You're a comedian who thinks having opinions makes you a journalist. Real journalists don't spend their time making jokes about people they disagree with. They report facts, not feelings dressed up as comedy." Colbert stepped out from behind his desk completely now, the physical barrier between them removed. "Facts? You want to talk about facts?" Colbert's voice carried a dangerous edge. "Here's a fact for you, Bruce. Your last 5 films combined made less money than one episode of this show generates in advertising revenue. Here's another fact. Most people under 30 know you better as the guy from those memes about looking confused than as an actual actor. But here's the biggest fact of all. You came on my show, to my stage, to promote your movie to my audience, and you have the audacity to insult not just me, but the intelligence of everyone watching." The words hit Willis like physical blows, and his face darkened further. "Your audience? These people aren't your audience, Stephen. They're Americans who deserve better than being lectured to by some guy who thinks wearing a suit and reading teleprompters makes him important. They deserve entertainment, not indoctrination disguised as comedy." Willis gestured broadly to the studio audience, many of whom were now looking extremely uncomfortable. "Don't you dare speak for my audience." Colbert's voice was now genuinely angry, all pretense of professional courtesy abandoned. "These people are smart enough to think for themselves, which is apparently more than I can say for someone who spent the last decade making the same movie over and over again with different titles. They don't need you to protect them from my opinions, Bruce. They're perfectly capable of changing the channel if they don't like what they hear." Willis took another step forward, now close enough to the desk that security personnel in the wings began moving closer to the stage area. "The same movie over and over? That's rich coming from someone whose entire show is the same format every single night. Same desk, same jokes, same predictable political commentary designed to make your audience feel superior to everyone who doesn't think exactly like you do." His voice was getting louder with each word. "At least my show evolves," Colbert fired back, his own voice rising to match Willis's volume. "At least I adapt to what's happening in the world instead of just showing up, collecting a paycheck, and sleepwalking through another explosion-filled 2 hours of nothing. When's the last time you challenged yourself as an actor, Bruce? When's the last time you took a role that required you to actually act instead of just looking stern and shooting guns?" The personal nature of the attacks was now impossible to ignore, and the studio audience was completely silent, watching two famous men destroy each other's careers in real time. Willis's hands were clenched at his sides, his entire body radiating, barely contained fury. "You want to see acting, Stephen? Here's some acting for you. I'm acting like I care what some failed comedian turned political commentator thinks about my career choices. I'm acting like this conversation matters. I'm acting like you're worth the time it takes to argue with you." "Failed comedian?" Colbert's voice cracked slightly, the insult hitting home. "Failed? I've won more awards for comedy than you've won for acting in the last 15 years combined. I've built something that matters, something that influences culture and politics, and actually makes a difference in the world. What have you built besides a brand based on playing the same tough guy character your entire career?" Willis laughed again, that same harsh sound that seemed to cut through the studio's atmosphere. "Awards from who? Other comedians? Other political activists disguised as entertainers? Congratulations, Stephen. You've impressed a bunch of people who already agreed with you. That's really challenging work." His sarcasm was thick enough to cut with a knife. "At least I have the courage to have actual opinions instead of hiding behind some fake tough guy persona," Colbert shot back, his face now visibly red. "At least I stand for something beyond whatever pays the most money. You want to talk about courage? Try having real conversations about real issues instead of just pretending to be a hero in movies while staying silent about everything that actually matters in the real world." Willis was now leaning over Colbert's desk, his face inches from the hosts. "Staying silent? I stay silent because I understand something you never learned, Stephen. Not everything needs to be about politics. Not everything needs to be a platform for your personal beliefs. Some of us still believe in entertaining people without trying to change their minds about everything." His voice was barely controlled, each word deliberate and sharp. "Entertainment without substance is just noise," Colbert replied, not backing down despite Willis's intimidating proximity. "And frankly, Bruce, that's exactly what your career has become. Noise. Loud, expensive. Noise that signifies absolutely nothing." Bruce Willis kicked off Stephen Colbert's show after fiery clash. Part 3. The silence that followed Colbert's devastating final insult was deafening. Willis straightened up slowly, his face cycling through emotions too quickly to track. Anger and humiliation battling for dominance. For a moment it seemed like he might actually walk away, might salvage what was left of this catastrophic interview. Instead, he did something that shocked everyone in the studio. "You know what, Stephen?" Willis's voice was now eerily calm, which somehow made it more threatening than when he was shouting. "You're absolutely right. My career has become noise. But at least my noise doesn't pretend to be music. At least I don't dress up my personal grudges as social commentary and call it brave." He paused, looking directly into the camera. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is what passes for intelligent discourse in America today. A man so convinced of his own moral superiority that he can't have a simple conversation without turning it into a lecture." Colbert's eyes flashed with renewed fury. "Don't you dare turn this around on me. You came onto my show and immediately started attacking everything I do, everything I stand for. You want to talk about lectures? You've been lecturing me about how to do my job since the moment you sat down, despite the fact that you're here. Because you need this show more than this show needs you." "Need this show?" Willis's calm facade cracked again. "I need this show like I need another sequel nobody asked for. I'm here as a favor to my publicist, not because I need Stephen Colbert's approval to sell movie tickets. People have been watching Bruce Willis movies since before you figured out how to make awkward jokes about politicians seem profound." The audience was now completely captivated by this real-time destruction of two careers. Some were still recording, others were simply staring in disbelief. The show's producers had moved from the wings onto the actual stage area, clearly preparing for some kind of intervention, but both men seemed oblivious to anything except their mutual destruction. "Since before I figured out how to make jokes?" Colbert's voice was incredulous. "Bruce, I've been in comedy longer than you've been making watchable movies. The difference is my career has grown and evolved while yours has been on a steady decline since the Clinton administration. The only reason you're still getting roles is because directors know you'll show up, hit your marks, and not ask for script changes that might require actual thought." Willis slammed his hand down on Colbert's desk with a sound that echoed through the studio like a gunshot. Several audience members jumped, and at least one person screamed. "Steady decline? I've made more money in the last 5 years than you'll see in your entire television career. I've entertained more people worldwide than your little comedy show ever will. The difference between us, Stephen, is that I don't need to tear other people down to make myself feel important." "You literally just spent the last 10 minutes tearing me down," Colbert shouted, his professional composure completely gone. "You attacked my work, my politics, my audience, and my integrity. But somehow I'm the one tearing people down? That's not just hypocritical, Bruce. That's delusional. Maybe all those movie explosions affected your hearing, because you clearly haven't been listening to yourself." Willis stepped back from the desk, but his posture remained aggressive. "I called out your hypocrisy, Stephen. There's a difference. You hide behind comedy to say things you'd never have the courage to say as yourself. You use your platform to attack anyone who doesn't share your worldview, then act surprised when someone finally calls you on it. That's not brave. That's cowardly." "Cowardly?" Colbert was now standing fully upright, his height advantage over Willis suddenly apparent. "Cowardly is taking roles in movies you know are garbage because they pay well. Cowardly is staying silent about important issues because you don't want to risk alienating part of your audience. Cowardly is coming on someone else's show and attacking them personally because you can't handle a few jokes about your career choices." The tension had reached a breaking point, and everyone in the studio could feel it. Willis looked around the room, taking in the shocked faces of the audience, the nervous energy of the crew, the obvious displeasure of the producers. For a moment, his expression softened slightly, as if he was seeing the situation clearly for the first time. "You know what?" Willis said, his voice dropping back to that dangerous whisper. "This is exactly what I expected from someone like you. Turn a simple promotional interview into a political battleground. then act like the victim when someone fights back. This is why people are tired of Hollywood celebrities, thinking their opinions matter more than everyone else's. Someone like me? Colbert's voice was razor-sharp. What exactly does that mean, Bruce? Someone who uses their platform responsibly? Someone who cares about something beyond their next paycheck? Someone who isn't afraid to have actual convictions instead of just playing tough guys in movies? Willis shook his head, a bitter smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Someone so arrogant they think entertainment should come with a political education. Someone so self-important they can't imagine that people might want to laugh without being lectured. Someone who's forgotten that television is supposed to be fun, not a platform for personal vendettas. The show's head producer finally stepped onto the stage, approaching the two men with obvious reluctance. "Gentlemen, I think we need to take a break here," he said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had dealt with difficult personalities before. But Willis held up a hand to stop him. "No break necessary," Willis said, straightening his jacket with exaggerated dignity. "I think I've heard enough wisdom for one evening. Stephen, this has been exactly what I expected it to be. Educational, in its own way." He turned to address the audience directly. "Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy the rest of your evening. Try not to let anyone tell you what to think about it." Colbert took a step forward. "That's it? That's how you're going to end this? With some sanctimonious exit line like you're in one of your movies? This isn't a script, Bruce. You can't just deliver your final one-liner and walk away from the mess you created." Willis paused at the edge of the stage area, turning back with that familiar smirk that had defined his screen persona for decades. "Watch me," he said simply. Then he walked directly toward the exit, ignoring the calls from the producers, the shocked murmurs from the audience, and Colbert's continued attempts to get the last word. "Bruce! Bruce, you don't get to just leave!" Colbert called after him, but Willis was already disappearing into the wings. The studio fell into chaos as audience members began talking all at once, crew members scrambled to figure out what to do next, and Colbert stood alone at his desk, looking equal parts furious and bewildered. The show's director quickly cut to commercial, but the damage was already done. In less than 20 minutes, two entertainment legends had managed to destroy not just an interview, but potentially their professional relationship with an entire network. The footage would be dissected, analyzed, and debated for years to come. But in that moment, all anyone could do was sit in stunned silence and wonder how a simple promotional appearance had turned into the most explosive confrontation in late-night television history. So there you have it, one of the most incredible clash of personalities ever captured on live television. Two men, both legends in their own right, who couldn't find common ground even when their careers depended on it. What did you think of this incredible confrontation? Have you ever seen anything like this level of tension between a host and guest? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe for more incredible stories from the world of entertainment. I want to know what moment from this clash surprised you the most, so let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.